Hi, we are Group 22, and our program is Running to the Future. The main goal of our program is to decrease the incidence of obesity in elementary school students in low-income schools in San Diego. We had three main evaluation questions for our program. First, what is the average increase of physical activity minutes per week at the end of the program? Second, what percentage of the students in the program reach their target minutes per week at the end of the program? Our bivariate third question is there a difference of physical activity minutes between the individuals in the experimental group and comparison group after the program? We use the theory of reason-action for our conceptual model. Our program aims to combat negative attitudes towards physical activity by using incentives to reward participants who are physically active. Similarly, to create a positive subjective norm, the program engaged family members and ultimately created a positive environment for behavior change. Lastly, peer norms also influence the child's intent to exercise. Our program utilized a quasi-experimental design. Both groups were evaluated at the start of the program and at the end, but only one group received the intervention. The schools we chose were not randomly assigned because they were chosen based on their location and their community's level of income. We selected both experimental and comparison groups from communities that were at or below the FPL. We recognize that not randomizing could be a limitation to our study, but since low-income communities are at greater risk for childhood obesity, choosing specific schools is vital to this study. We had various measurement tools with our multiple variables. One measurement tools we utilized was surveys. We distributed before, during, and after the intervention for both the student participant and their parents. Parents continued to receive paper surveys throughout the study while student surveys were administered verbally. Verbal surveys are beneficial when working with young populations that have differing reading levels. One limitation of verbal surveys is that they are timely and costly. Objective measurements were also utilized in the evaluation portion of our program. Since minutes of physical activity is a ratio data, we used physical activity tickets as an objective measurement. While at school, students received one physical activity ticket for every 20 minutes of physical activity they participated in. These tickets were turned in at the end of each week and were redeemed for various prizes. Although this is an objective measurement, using an accelerometer may have increased the validity of our study. For our program evaluation, we used We used multivariable data analysis because we had three main variables: minutes of physical activity, BMI, and knowledge. Furthermore, we used multiple regression to study all three variables simultaneously. Using this measurement allowed us to study the relationship among all variables through multiple regression. Through inferential statistics, we were able to make the assumption that all three of our variables, knowledge, BMI, and minutes of physical activity, positively correlated with the overall health of elementary school children in low-income communities. So as a reminder, here are three of our evaluation questions. For our first question, the findings of this evaluation question is that the average increase of physical activity per minute was 15 minutes for the comparison group and 60 minutes for the intervention group. For our second question, the finding of this evaluation question is that 85% of the students reached their target minutes per week by the end of this program. For our third question, the finding of this evaluation question is yes, there is a difference of physical activity minutes between the comparison and intervention groups after the program. This is an example of 10 students that participated in the program. 5 of these students were in the intervention group and 5 of them were in the comparison group. As you can see, students in the comparison group had fewer minutes of physical activity compared to the intervention group. The comparison group also had a higher BMIs than the intervention group. These next two graphs show the differences between the comparison and intervention group at pre-test and post-test measurement. As you can see, the comparison group had an average of 200 minutes of physical activity pre-test and 215 minutes post-test. Although they did not receive any interventions, minutes of physical activity still increased. This could be due to cross-contamination, which is a weakness of our study. Average minutes of physical activity also increased for the intervention group. At pre-test, they averaged 220 minutes per week versus 280 minutes per week at post-test. This is a 60-minute increase, which is significantly higher than the comparison group. Overall, our program was effective in increasing minutes of physical activity in this specific population. Although we increased minutes of exercise, we did not meet the objective of increasing exercise by 50%. We realized that this was an overambitious study objective, and it is something we will modify for our next intervention group. Other measures, including BMI and knowledge, also increased through the exercise program. As mentioned throughout the presentation, we have various limitations. Since we use a quasi-experimental design, we were not able to control for puberty, age, or knowledge difference between grade levels. Also, the schools that we chose were based on their location and community level of income. Therefore, we were not able to randomize our selection. Instead, we used convenient sampling to select our schools, which may have resulted in cross-contamination.